Today's guest is Kara Cuzzetto. Kara is a Pacific Northwest native, has been married for 30 years, and is blessed with three beautiful children and is expecting her first grandchild in July. She began her continuous improvement journey in 2001 while working as a revenue operations manager at Virginia Mason Medical Center. In 2014, she took a job at King County in Seattle as a full-time lean practitioner to help the county expand their lean management methodology. Today, she manages the lean program for the Finance and Business Operation Division at King County and enjoys coaching and mentoring the 170 team members across FBOD. Anything is possible when you trust the process, is what her motto is, and humble leadership is the key to it all. Here's our guest, Kara Cuzzetto. Kara, we briefly touched on who you were in the intro, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, and how lean or continuous improvement is a part of your life?
Sure. So I started my lean journey at Virginia Mason Medical Center in 2001 or so. We embarked on a lean journey there, really grounded in the Toyota production system. And as a leader at Virginia Mason, you were asked to either get on the bus or get run over by the bus, as they say. So I chose to really embrace things and am really very happy about that choice. I think it's kind of shaped the leader that I am today and allowed me the opportunity to get certified in the Virginia Mason production system and go to Japan and study at Toyota in Japan and see it, where the magic actually happens. And that was an incredible experience. And currently I'm working for King County in Seattle, Washington, and helping finance and business operations through their lean journey, and have been on with them for about 7 years now. And so I'm just helping them take really from the ground up and grow into what we're able to do today, which I really feel like is a really engaged workforce that is really improving the work that they do. So that's pretty proud of that. Yeah.
You're doing the good work in a beautiful part of the country. I don't.
Yes.
So
Yes.
listeners may not know exactly where King County is. You want to explain to them where you are, and you've got a peculiar background that we talked about before the podcast. You want to talk about that?
Sure, sure. So I live in Edmonds, Washington. So King County is our offices are centralized in Seattle, Washington, so Pacific Northwest. And as we mentioned before, kind of have the best of all worlds here, right? We're surrounded by mountains and water, and really can't want for anything in this area of the world. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Listeners to the podcast, if you've never been to that part of the country, I would encourage you to go now that things are starting to open back up. And Kara, for the people that are watching on video, talk to us about your background.
So this is my front yard. This is Edmonds, Washington. This is where the ferry comes in. So we're about 100 yards from where that ferry docks on the waterfront
That's
there.
really beautiful, and it's peaceful. It put me at peace just talking to you, looking at it. Right, it's a lot better than the background I have here, right, in Memphis, Tennessee. Well, Kara, we always ask folks to share with us a quote or a mantra from a favorite leader. And could you share with us what your quote is and why you chose it?
Yeah, so my quote, I love that Albert Einstein quote. If I had an hour to work on a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes looking at the problem and then 5 minutes talking about the solution. I think the reason I really kind of resonate with that quote is so oftentimes we're trying to jump to solutions and really alleviate that anxiety around the problem. But oftentimes what we're doing is just either pushing the problem off to somebody else, or we're not really solving for the root cause. We're just putting band-aids over um, that problem. And so, how do we really start to think deeply about problems and really look to the folks who are closest to the work and understand, and really how do we empower them to take those steps to even say we have a problem. So
I think one of the best parts about that is not jumping to conclusions. And the best teachers of this thing we call lean or continuous improvement that I've been exposed to, their secret weapon is asking really powerful discovery questions that provoke thought. Right? They don't say, "Oh, I know how to fix that. Let's just grab this tool over here." You need a Kanban. It's what are we? Why is this a problem? How does this impact our process? How should it be being done? Like, what's the target condition, and then what's the current condition? And just taking the time to flesh out those questions and to work through those as a team, and asking questions versus telling people is really the secret sauce to this thing that we do.
Well, and you get so much more engagement that way, right? And also they're bought into the solution because they are part of creating that solution, and so it hopefully prevents that backsliding, going back into what they used to do and were comfortable with. That they're really, they've got some skin in the game, and they want to see it succeed too.
Absolutely. So for folks that are listening or watching, hot tip here that you're going to get is, when you're asking questions, are you asking from a place of compliance or engagement? Usually the types of responses in the nonverbal behavior and the engagement and participation that you get will help tell you what types of questions that you're asking. Well,
Yeah, looking for, are they going to that silent space, or are they, leaning forward and leaning into it? Yeah, for sure.
so one of my goals for this podcast is to help other lean leaders resonate with your experiences. So can you tell us your story about how you chose this profession or why you chose it?
Uh, uh chose. That's a great word. I I think there was choice there, right? And when it was happening, I probably didn't feel like there was much choice, but of course there was. And I think, as you get more engaged in lean and really embrace the the foundation of it, which really is about, how do we empower people and how do we remove waste from systems? It it's like a no-brainer, right? Like, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we use these methods? Why wouldn't we talk about things this way? I mean, the solutions that you come up with this collaborative group think, um, the safety that you create with people really talking about problems, it it's like I said, I feel sometimes like I'm Willy Wonka and I have that golden ticket to the chocolate factory. And here, just listen to this, and it really is the secret sauce. There's so many different elements to it, right? It's people, it's process, it's a lot of EQ, right? A lot of emotional intelligence is involved in it, um, and uh, and really foundationally, it's about growing people. And how do you and really, I think that's where my passion comes from. Is that, this is really my chance to help grow people in a way that I think is very um, um, beneficial to, just life in general. It's so translatable and transferable to your personal life and to just life in general. And so, um, yeah, I sometimes I feel like, why won't you take my ticket?
Yes, absolutely. I think people that are listening or watching right now have all felt that at some point. Like, I, it's like I have an answer that could help you, is if you'll take a moment to listen. And we know all too well there are folks that, nope, that's not the way I'm going to do it. I don't care how important it is. It's not going to work for us.
Yeah, it reminds me of that cartoon with the cavemen with the square wheels on their wagon, and the guy with the round wheels, and they're like, no, 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 too busy.
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
We're too busy handling waste to eliminate waste.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned emotional intelligence, and that's come up
Mhm.
in a few conversations that I've had recently. Can you help expand upon that concept to the listeners of the podcast? Like, what does emotional intelligence mean to you, and how do you apply it to the work that you do?
Um, so in a nutshell, I don't know everything. I'm not a hero, superhero. I don't wear a cape. And so for me, it's really that the humble inquiry, and how do you really um, create safety for folks to really say, I have a problem, or I need some help, or this isn't working for me, or whatever that might be. I also think it has a lot to do with um, uh, growing people, right? And really having that desire to see people transform, and that the light in their eye when you are able to make transformational change. And um, I I think the biggest thing is that I don't have all the answers. I need people in order to get the best results that we can. And also, it's um, being able to uh, read the room and really kind of understand like where folks are coming from, and how do you kind of meet them where they're at, and and uh, have respect for that, um, i- and um, and generally showing that respect, honoring the journey that they've come through, the life experiences that they've had since then. And um, it, but I really think it boils down to, I don't have all the answers, and I need other people to help me. And you know, how do I make people safe in helping me with that without being, oh God, what does she really want, right? And authenticity, I think, is key to that. I think,
So authenticity, empathy, active listening, self-awareness, and then awareness of others. I think those are all just these ingredients that help make up this emotional intelligence
mhm,
cake that we want people to take a bite from.
yep.
And I think whenever someone says, "Well, I can't, I don't have the ability to read minds," like, well, all of us since birth have developed a a mode for determining how others are reacting, and that's how we react. I mean, it's yeah. Do you know if your significant other is upset with you, right? I mean, or as a child, it's how do I know? How do I know that I'm safe? Well, if you're riding in the car and you're in the back seat and you see your mother grip the wheels real quick and put her head back in her eyes, that's emotional awareness of saying something's about to happen. I should probably brace myself too, right?
Yep.
But we also learn joy and happiness. So if you see in developmentally, if you see your parents or family members, if they're happy, then you ask yourself, maybe I should be happy too, and why, right? And kind of developing our own awareness in this world. If you are that one person that doesn't know if your spouse is angry with you or not, I can't help you. As you said earlier, I don't have all the answers, but I think listening and asking a good question of, it seems like you're upset, can you help me understand, probably goes a long way.
Mm. Well, and what is my behavior telling people? Like,
Yes.
and being in tune with that, and acknowledging that when you get a reaction, like, lean into that and get some understanding around it. And vulnerability, I think, is another one too, that
Oh,
you know
great element. Great element. Well, Kara, can you share with us, I guess, the story about what you consider your biggest setback with lean or continuous improvement? Maybe any mistakes that you made, and how you applied that learning to your profession now?
Sure. Maybe it is. So we've embarked on this journey at King County around leader standard work. And so I think going into it, I made some assumptions that folks understood what that kind of meant, right? And I think the just realizing that leaders are a little bit hesitant to kind of be transparent in the beginning. And leader standard work is really about transparency, about how, you know, as a leader, these are the expectations of how you're going to show up, and we're actually going to measure that. And so I think I could have used a little EQ in embarking on that journey and not making assumptions that, that folks really understood what that, what that meant as far as, putting their leadership kind of out there. Transparency we want to see when you're huddling. We want to see when your performance around. We want to be able to see this stuff. And so I think I could have done a little or a much better job in really setting the stage in fundamentally, what does that mean? If we're committing to leader standard work, what does that mean for me as a leader individually? And so I think stepping back and really setting the stage and maybe doing some one-on-one work with leaders prior to even, kind of embarking on the concept, rather than, okay, here's the 6 elements of leader standard work. We're going to break us up into 3 teams, and we're going to create this curriculum, and we're going to, and they're just sitting back going, what? So, so I think I lost probably about 6 or 9 months of traction in that, and having to just kind of step back, start over, regroup. But you know what? I really take that as a huge learning, right? I know now that I can't go in and make assumptions and expect people to read my mind. And so it's, I really, I enjoy failing because I learn from that. I learn way more from my failures than I do from hitting a home run. So yeah, I think that was probably the most recent one I can reflect upon.
So what I love about that story, Kara, is you're talking about something. I mean, you've been doing this since 2001. You're talking about something that happened recently, and I think a lot of the folks, when they talk about a setback with continuous improvement, they talk, oh, well, back when I was younger and when I first started out, it says, people with experience still make mistakes too,
Oh,
and
every day.
Yes, regularly but I think that what I love about that story was just with the humility that you demonstrated when you're talking about that. And I think people who are listening can say, I've done that. I have jumped straight to the compliance mode of, here's what we're going to do, here's the task, here's the tool, but not building consensus and buy-in, and then also starting from need, and start with why. Why is this important? Why do we need to embark upon this journey? What is the benefit for you? What is the benefit to the organization? And I've seen leader standard work really well. I've seen leader standard work fall flat on its face right the first step out of the gate. The ones that work really well, it's you help the person that's going through the task understand this isn't about one size fits all leader standard work. This is about you standardizing your work and helping us understand what you're doing so that we can fill in and help out. And I remember one round we did their first initial assessment, and they were working through it. And one of the leaders says, I spend 6 hours a day in email. And I'm like, but you know what? That was their perception. And when we went to go test it and we walked through it with their leader, it wasn't 6 hours, it was 4, which is still way too much. And even the leader said, this is the leader's leader said, I have set this person up for failure because now I've designed this process where basically this person has to wait for an email to come from another process before we move through? How do we build into the process where the communication is natural and it's visual versus, hey, you're going to have to spend 6 hours, 4 hours a day in email every day. And what that person said, leader standard work freed my life. It made my life better. It freed me up because it made my leader aware of the condition that I was in.
Yeah. And it's, I love uh, um, just the freedom of being able to say, you know what, let's start over. Let's start again. Let's regroup, let's rethink, and that's okay. It yeah, we all learn.
I learned it the hard way. As a young operations manager, I made a mistake and I let something slip. And my manager said, "Let me see your leader standard work. Let's work on this together." I didn't have it on me. I didn't have it on me at the time, and I couldn't go get it either because I really hadn't put a lot of effort into it. I kind of said, "This will go away. I'll go back to my old way of operating. I just need to ride this out." And that leader taught me that that's why we do leader standard work. How are we going to prevent this from happening again in the future? Like,
Yeah.
you don't have the mental capacity to handle everything that you say. You have to write it down. You have to have a checklist.
Yeah. I think one of the important things that is in there is that go see, right? We can sit back in our offices and we can make assumptions all day, every day, but we have really no idea what's going on. And unless we go out and see it, to your point, right? I got 6 hours of emails. Well, in reality, the data is showing you have 4 hours of email. To your point, is way too much, but you're actually going and seeing where it's happening, and we're not sitting back and waiting and just trying to solve from our office. I think that that's the, if I could give advice to one advice to new leaders out there, is get out of your office, go and see, go talk to your people. 2 questions: what's working well, what would you change? And like, the wealth of information that you get from just going out and talking to people and asking those 2 questions is phenomenal.
Agreed. Well, what was the aha moment for your career? Like, when did the tumblers of the universe click for you, and Kara said, this is the work that I'm supposed to be doing? Like, what was that moment in your journey?
um I think for me was uh really understanding that a lot of what I do is coaching, and really understanding that. And I had a mentor, get a mentor too, if please get a mentor. And he said, I really think that you should really look into kind of formalizing what you're doing around this coaching. And so I embarked on about an 18-month journey with King County through their coaching certification program, and then have gone on to with ICF to get my ACC. And I think that has really that was the flipping the switch for me and really changing that mindset. Fundamentally, I really try to come at everything from a coaching perspective, and really asking questions in a way that that allow folks to get to their own solutions, and identifying their own plan that they can get behind in order to move that to completion or results or whatever that might be, and kind of being able to put some formal kind of training and guardrails around that. And I think has really kind of transformed my leadership style, in just kind of how I show up every day, and really using that coaching mindset.
I love the commitment to self-development, self-improvement, trying to get better, not to make yourself better, but to make yourself better so that you could serve others. For the folks that are not familiar with what ACC stands for, can you expand on that for them?
It's a associate certified coach is the official acronym for that. It's a certification through the International Coaches Federation, ICF, which is kind of the oversight body of the coaching world. So ACC is your first kind of initial certification in that. You have to attend at least 60 hours of training, have over 100 hours of observed mentored coaching, and then you take a test. It's a 3-hour, 150 multiple choice test that is very nerve-wracking, to say the least. But to your point, it's just it really was a very transformational learning journey for me to really put some like I said, some structure and purpose behind kind of how I was showing up as a leader just in itself.
So
So
we'll put a link to the Coaches Federation into the show notes page. So if people want to look out and learn more, they can click on that and find that. Do you have a lean or continuous improvement pet peeve or something you frequently see being applied or done wrong?
Standard work.
Okay. Can you help me understand that? Discovery, right?
Yeah. So what I've always learned, there's standard work and then there's standard process, right? Standard work is very time bound. It's based on tact time, demand. It's value stream. It's very precise. And standard process is kind of a description of how you move through a process, right? And then there's desk manuals, and then there's job aids, and there's all these different things that kind of fall under this umbrella of standard work. And I guess maybe it doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as you have it, and really understanding fundamentally why standard work, right? It's about removing process variation so that you're able to easily see the waste that's left over. If everybody's doing it a different way, it's very difficult to see kind of where the defects are happening or where the waste is being introduced, or even like what our customers want, right? And the variation by operator, impacts your customer experience, right? They get one operator and they get this experience, another operator that experience, and so really, and it's not about prescription, right? It's not about like, uh, you know, telling people what to do. It should be collaborative. You should really get in a room and say, okay, this is how I do it. Well, this is how I do it. Well, what's the best way to do it? And like trying that and coming together and really creating that standard work collaboratively so that everybody can get behind it and say, yes, this is the best way to do it for our customers. And then not putting that on a shelf, right? It shouldn't be a stagnant document. It shouldn't, we're not going to laminate it, right? Because once you say this is the way we're going to do it, now, because we're all doing it the same way, all ideas are going to come up on how we can start improving on that. And so, oftentimes I think people think of standard work as being very rigid and very prescribed, and some is that way due to safety, due to compliance, due to whatever that might be. But there is, there's a lot of choice and a lot of ability to have say in how that standard work is written, produced, what the outcomes might be. And so just kind of getting away from that myth of it's got to be this way, and it's top down, right? It never should be top down. The people that are doing the work should be creating that standard work. So I think that's probably one of them.
So, well, the people doing the work are the experts. Like they do it every day.
Yes.
They know it better than anybody else. Listen to your experts.
Yep.
What do you consider the most important thing that you've learned in your career journey so far?
I don't have all the answers. I need people. I and how do you empower people? People continuously challenge people to get out of their comfort zone, um, and because that's where they're learning, right? And I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question.
No, what do you consider the most important thing you've learned in your journey so far? I think you hit it, right?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I think just humility. Humility, I think,
Agreed.
is probably the most important thing.
Humility is one of those things that attracts people. Like this, you want to be around the humble. It says this person cares about me more than they care about themselves. That's who I want to be around. I think humble and like respect, asking questions with humble inquiry is probably the most important thing that I've learned in my career, and that's in anything, career, life. You know, anybody who has teenagers, you need to understand humble inquiry if you want to work through some of the challenges of parenthood with teenagers. Yeah. A little PTSD there, right? So, well, you told us earlier about the piece of advice you would give to someone starting out with lean and continuous improvement. What piece of advice would you give to someone who's maybe a little bit further along in their career?
I think it goes back to kind of your continual learning. I think sometimes even us lean practitioners, right, we get comfortable in what we know, kind of in what's worked before, right, and kind of rinse and repeat and kind of try to replicate that. I think that we need to be able to be very nimble and kind of shift with what the times are or what's going on. I think in 2019 we never would have thought that we would have been in this virtual world and doing process improvement virtually. No way, we can't do this possibly, right? And so I think just kind of how do we remain in that continual kind of growth and learning and trying new things, right? Not getting stuck in our ruts. We all have our favorite tool that we go back to, our favorite exercise or whatever that might be. But how do we continue to learn and grow? Just like, we're creators of constant change, continuous improvement. How do we replicate that in ourselves and continually to make ourselves better?
I think the one thing that we learned from 2020 and the pandemic is results matter more than location. And how you get to those results challenge, like our environment changed, so it challenged us to respond and react in an appropriate way. I think the folks that were open, that had that spirit of collaboration, that had that spirit of innovation, thrived. I think the folks that said, this is the one best way, this is the only way we're going to do it, and unless we can do it in person, we're not going to do it. I think being able to collaborate is a competitive advantage, and it forced us to look at the continuous improvement work that we do and apply the principles of continuous improvement to our work to get the results that were desired. 2020 was probably the most isolating year, but also the biggest year of professional growth and development for me in a long time. I think just challenging the way that I approach the work. Well, do you have a favorite book, author, or mentor that you would recommend to our listeners?
So the one that came to my mind when you asked me that question was, I love the three vital questions, which is based in the Power of Ted. So that the drama triangle, right? Victim, uh, persecutor, and uh, rescuer. And really, what I love about that is that it um, every moment of every day we're in choice. And um, how do we how do we think about that a little bit more deeply and not just try to alleviate the anxiety around the problem that we're having, but really flip that and think about, uh, things coming at us as kind of a challenge, and how do we rise to that challenge and really create something new. And rather than looking at folks coming in, and needing somebody to rescue me, or kvetch with me, or whatever, challenge me and coach me in a way that makes me think about things differently, or take a different step, or try something differently. But really, like, um, I think about, like, in crucial conversations, that path to action, right? We see and we hear something which makes us uh, um, feel something, and then we behave a certain way, right? And we hear and we see things which makes us feel like that's our moment of choice, right? If we choose to, doom and gloom and everybody's out to get me, that's gonna, um, you know, taint that decision, that choice that we're going to make in that moment. But if we think about it differently and think about, ooh, this is a challenge. How can I rise to this occasion? And, you know, it changes how you think about that, and what you're feeling, and your behaviors. And so I think I just that book, and that the kind of just um, thought process, and just kind of, changing that, where your focus is, where, how are you relating to things, and really just kind of taking a moment to think about things a little bit deeper, and just ask yourself, am I really just reacting to the anxiety around the problem, or am I really trying to get results that are going to make a difference? And
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the how you perceive the situation and how you choose to respond to it is a really great piece of advice. What you're talking about reminds me of Malcolm Gladwell, where he and David and Goliath,
mm,
where it talks about the things that you say are pains for you are actually, if you were the other side of this, they would consider it a strategic advantage. I mean, it's one of the warehouse leaders that I worked with in the past. He said, "Oh, we're not as big as all the other ones, so it's difficult for us to achieve the same results." And I said, "Wait a second, time out. The leader of the larger warehouse would much rather have your situation, because that person can run their startup meeting and they're done. They don't need to go communicate to multiple groups across multiple times and shifts. It's you got your whole team here all at once. He would trade with you in a minute because he sees what you have as a strategic advantage."
yep.
And so, I didn't think
Yeah.
about it that way. Okay, let's explore that. That's good, right?
Yeah.
Um, I,
And I think anytime we can kind of change just have folks think about things just a little bit differently, like again, just get them out of their comfort zone and into that kind of, oh, you know, yeah, maybe I do need to think about this differently. I think that's just such a cool thing to be able to do, right? Um, the other work, and I just want to touch on this really quickly, is that I think the other very important thing is that tools are great, and standard work is great, leader standard work is great, though, but you have to have a culture that is able to um, uh, take in these changes and be willing to change, right? And so I would say we probably embarked on a tools based journey. We trained folks as green belts and put them in sections and caused all kinds of havoc, right? Suspicion, why are you here? What is this, right? And until we really stepped back and started working on our culture, we trained everybody in crucial conversations. We put everybody through the 2-day 5 behaviors of a cohesive team workshop. We follow up on that. Every team has team norms. Their DISC profiles are visible on their tier boards. And I think that is just it's so much more important than any tool you can give somebody, is to create a culture where folks are safe enough to say we have a problem or we need to work on this, or whatever that might be. And also the ability to have conversations in a way that lead towards change and that don't take us backwards and cause more problems than we had in the beginning. So that's another piece of advice that I would give folks, is that you've got to have a good culture before you can embark on this journey.
That is great advice. I think the thing that stood out to me about what we were talking about is, if people go to the training mode first and don't underpin it with the right culture, then you're going to create training fatigue for your people. And you've got to give them that training and then the space to apply what they've learned in that laboratory of life, or the laboratory of the workplace, and then reflect, and then discover what gaps you need to fill in for the next bit of training. But it's not just, hey, we're going to do Covey 7 steps, we're going to do 5S training, and then we're going to do this, and then I've checked off all the check marks for my year, and I've accomplished my mission. And
everybody hates me.
Yeah. And the only thing you have done is anytime someone says, hey, let's do some training, you have turned them off. They are like, they tune out. I'm out, not interested.
Or they see you coming and they turn around and walk the other way. They're like, I don't want any part of this lady. Like, that's right. That's not what we want. We want people really jazzed about, their ability to make change, to like, I've got a rock in my shoe. How do I take it out? How do I, and give, and making them safe enough to even say, I've got a rock in my shoe. That's the biggest hurdle. And I think in government, especially, right, where, it can be very hierarchical, and also very, there's a lot of folks have been there for a long time, and some of them have even, created these processes and are very emotionally involved in them. And for us to come in and say, we need to change this. They're like, what do you mean we need to change? It's been working fine for 30 years. Then there's no problem here. Go away, right? We have to be able to create a place where people are jazzed about, getting out of a rut, doing something differently, making some change, so it's.
That's great advice, because I think one of the gaps that folks have is piece of advice I would give is, you really need to like your work. You have to like it. You have to enjoy it. You can't love it, because the minute you love your work, then you get upset when someone comes along and changes it because you love it. But if you like it, that invites the spot of, well, I like it, but I like your way better. Let's see what we can do, or let's see how we can improve it.
Absolutely.
And anyone who has worked with engineers knows that an engineer has an opinion on how they would have done it differently, and you need to respect that and embrace it and move forward with it. It's and I think that's just that spirit of finding the best way. And once you establish the new standard, is, now that I've changed the condition, what have I learned, and how do things change now, because there's a new environment. That's why I love this work, because it's always something different and new every day.
And you make that one change for that one person, and you see the lights go off, and like, now they've got it, and they're like off like wildfire, right? They're like change agents. They're changing everything, right? And that's I think the most exciting thing to see, is when you can transform somebody like that. Yeah.
Well, Kara, we know that magic wands don't exist, but if they did and you had one, what is the one thing that you would typically wave your wand at first with a group that you're coaching or working with?
the perception that we don't have time to do improvement.
Great answer.
Yeah, I think that's one of the frustrating things that I bump up against is that, we just don't have time to do that. We're so overwhelmed. When, if you would just take this time to do this, the time that you're going to get back on the other end is just exponentially, and then you can get out of this overwhelmed feeling and feeling like you're under the gun all the time. So yeah.
That's great. And for folks that are listening to this, like our improvement professionals, the question I would ask is, are you blocking out time on your calendar for deep reflection? Like, are you blocking out time for deep work, like thought work, to think about the work that you're doing and how you can improve that? And if you're not, you're just hanging on by your fingertips. Like you need that time of reflection before projection.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to write that down.
Well, it's recorded, so I mean,
there you go.
Yeah, you've got it here. All right. Well, Kara, how can people connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do, or if they have a question for you based on something they've heard in this podcast episode?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, or my county address is my name at kingcounty.gov. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to help. My mentor asked me to create a mantra for myself, and so I wake and walk in service. So that's.
Yeah, see, I would write that down. That's awesome. All right.
Yeah, I am here to serve. I love helping people, and steal shamelessly is the foundation of lean, I say. So.
Absolutely. Well, Kara, thank you for being a guest on our podcast today. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience. We have to shrink this down to something that somebody could listen to in a brief period of time, but I imagine that we could get coffee and have this conversation for a long time. So I really appreciate you spending time with us today and sharing your experiences.
It was really great, Chris. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks. I want to thank Kara for being a guest on the podcast today. I know I got a lot out of our conversation, and I hope that you did as well. Be sure to go to the show notes page at leanleadershippodcast.com and check out the links. There, you'll be able to connect with Kara if you have a question about what we talked about today. As always, I welcome your feedback on how to improve the podcast. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and leave a rating on the podcast in whatever channel that you listen to us on. Thank you for listening, and until next time, seek progress over perfection.